Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we'll be breaking down our picks for the top 5 and one worst level 1 Druid spells.
Indeed. We're
All
into
right.
druids living our best life, turning into all kinds of fun critters and whatnot. Druids are prepared casters. That means you can prepare any of these in between long rests. You can be like, I didn't like this one. This one wasn't speaking to me. I didn't get to use that much. I'm going to take something different. And you can do that every long rest. It's really great. It also makes niche effects a little bit better because you can say, well, I'm going to need jump for whenever we go onto the mountain climbing expedition or whatever. I'm going to need speak with animals if we're going to go, into a woods and you want to talk to animals. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
you can prepare spells for
Zoo.
when you need them.
Yeah.
It's useful feature.
All right. There's that caveat, and the usual. I don't rate these in any particular order. Sam does 1 through 5. Mine are just my favorite 5 in no particular order.
This is true.
Having said that, I wasn't too keen on the cantrip list, but there are a lot of fun things on the level 1 list that I liked, and a little bit of a hard time picking my favorites. And there were also a couple of good candidates for my least favorite.
Yeah, there were two in particular, at least the worst, that I was like, ooh, this is actually kind of tough.
I'm going to make a prediction. I don't think we're going to have a very similar list at all for this one.
Maybe. There aren't a ton of these, surprisingly. Like, the Druid spell list isn't exactly robust for their first level options. And prior to, like, the printing in Elemental Evil, whenever they gave us the free expansion of elemental spells, which was a great idea. And I'm really sad that we didn't see more free player content alongside adventures. I don't know. It could have sold adventures better. Maybe it was a good idea. Maybe the adventure was just utter crap because Prince of the Apocalypse was bad. Anyway, that's not important. They gave druids a bunch of really needed like quality of life updates, like Ice Knife. So there are a bunch of options on here that shored up some of the druids' first level problems for sure and the player's handbook at least. You want to go first?
I'm sure I'll go first. What do I have? I've got Entangle.
Entangle is my number one. I've come to grow on this spell a lot. I thought it was like just mediocre whenever I started playing. As a DMing for it, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it entangles, restrains a few creatures. What is it, 20-foot square?
Yep.
So yeah, if you got a couple baddies lumped together, you can have a crack at grabbing them with some weeds.
I think like this spell particularly shines brightest at levels 1 through 3. Well, the moment Summon Beast is online, which is you're going to hear me whenever we're doing these reviews, me talk a lot about Summon Beast and Conjure Minor Elementals and all the summon effects, because it's kind of what Druid's bread and butter is. But they don't have anything like that for the first level, which leaves them, in the original game, in the Player's Handbook only version of D&D 5e, they really struggled to have big, high-impact stuff outside of Entangle. But what Entangle does do that's high impact is, if you can get 2 things to fail and get restrained, those 2 things are going to waste turns. And wasting turns for a single first-level spell slot is excellent. It costing you concentration is a lot more difficult now in the modern era whenever we've got really powerful long-duration concentration effects that you definitely want to maintain them on. So this spell isn't something that I love preparing in the higher levels. At the lower levels, though, excellent. If it eats 2 creatures' actions, difficult terrain, makes someone dash twice or something, this is going to have a great impact on a fight that's going to give your team an action advantage, which is really, whenever you don't have a great damaging option and stuff like that, kind of what you want in a druid.
Also, I mean, if it does restrain a couple of creatures, that's 2 less creatures that are coming at you to break your concentration. So
yeah,
that's neat.
it's true. It works great alongside player or parties that have great ranged options, right? Where you can just throw in an entangle and just if you're only against 2 things and both of them fail, you're like, oh great, we trivialized this entire encounter. We're just gonna take free prot shots at them until they die, right? And if you can get 2 free rounds of attacks against a low tier fight, it just ends the low tier fight. And those kind of effects deserve praise, and this is one of such of them.
And naturally, druids do have the concentration area of effect and summoning magic, which is what they're going to be wanting to use at higher levels. If for some reason they run out of those and somebody else has an area of effect spell, use this to hold creatures in place.
Yeah, and very like 20-foot difficult terrain radius, the 20-foot square, I'm sorry, is pretty large. It will take 30-foot creatures and make them have to dash across it. that is notable, right? That is eating at least an action in a lot of scenarios that have fairly narrow quarters. And I think that's where Entangle is going to end up shining brightest. Doubling up on those area effect damage spells, if you're looking at like a cloud kill, this underneath the cloud kill will help keep enemies in it for at least an extra round, and at a really cheap cost. You're right. Like if you drop concentration on your summon effects, you go, okay, well, cloud kill's still down. Great. You're sticking that cloud kill for another round. That's genuinely a useful thing, or at the very least, force them to dash out of it and not take other actions. And that's great.
Awesome. For one so far.
Nice. My number 2, I don't think this is controversial, but maybe I'm wrong. I think Absorb Elements is nuts. I think this spell is really, really, really good. It's not like Shield, it's not Silvery Barbs, but my goodness, does this thing have a high impact when you need it?
Like I said, I don't rate these in order, but that was also my second one listed.
Yeah,
All right,
it was
I guess
almost my
my
number 1.
prediction might be wrong.
Could be. I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah, the extra damage on hit is fine at level 1, especially if you're playing like a Shillelagh Druid. It kind of makes it feel fine to use in the early tier. It's something I'm going to be preparing that often in the early tier unless I know I'm against elemental damage stuff. But past 5th level, it's so easy just to stick this as one of your prepared spells. Anytime you're dealing into elemental damage, you're just like, oh, actually, I'm resistant to that right now when I need to be. And that makes it really flexibly just great. It's like how Shield you only need the AC whenever you're going to get hit. And it says, hey, you got the AC now. This is the kind of thing where you only need the damage resistance when you're going to take that damage. And this goes, great. You're going to take that damage. Now you're resistant to it. Easy peasy. It's reactive. It's flexible. It's great. It's worse. And this is an important note as well. Druids have basically 2 different lanes. They're either Moon Druids or they're everything else. This is a lot worse on Moon Druids because Moon Druids can't cast spells in combat for almost the entire game. So you're like, okay, well, if I'm a bear, I can't use the Absorb Elements very well. You probably want other utility out of combat stuff there. If you're not doing specifically Moon Druid, though, and you're playing any other kind of like mid-rangey Circle of Spores, Circle of Wildfire, Absorb Elements, it's great. Big fan.
Are there any other reaction options on the first level list?
Not that I saw.
Yeah, well, that's another argument in its favor. And that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
kind of where I was leaning.
Yeah.
It's a reaction option. It's good. That was good enough to make my list.
Yeah, general rule of thumb, if you want to empower your character, make sure you have good things to do with your bonus action, good things to do with your action, good things to do with your reaction, that's the hard one, and good ways to move. All those things are easy ways to make every little bit of your turn a little bit more important. What do you got next?
Let's find out. Number 3, I've got... Oh, I know this one didn't make your list. I've got Thunderwave.
Thunderwave did not make my list. I think that spell's overrated.
Yes, you do, and we've done the video on it, and I gave some more thought. And yeah, you're right. It's not a great spell for if you're getting mobbed, and this is your Hail Mary to get everybody off your back. But it's got okay damage, and if you use it offensively, you're not trying to get people off your back. You're running at them and thunder waving them, hopefully into something even more powerful and dangerous.
There's a cute thing you can do where, because it originates from you can put that cube's facing in a bunch of different ways. So you can have it be like 15 feet out from you. If you're the center of it, it'll be like a nice little square around you. That's a cute way to do it. You can do a bunch of different weird facings with this. It's awkward to put. If my number 3 didn't get printed, this would have made my top 5 because it's kind of like the best thing Druids had for a really long time if they wanted area of effect damage. Again, this is prior to Prince of the Apocalypse specifically. This was just how Druids had to do damage in the early game if they wanted to have area effect damage. I don't love 2d8. I don't love the range. I think Burning Hands obviously is like way, way better than this. That being said, the 10-foot push isn't nothing. I've seen it be effective enough, and effective enough is good enough for a lot of players. If you like Thunderwave's knockback, if you like the thematics of it, I think it's pretty harmless to put on your sheet. It's by no far my worst. It's not my top 5, but it's by no far my worst.
I also, I've been in kind of a shoving frame of mind lately. I've been looking into a lot of shoving options, and I thought, wow, combine Thunderwave with telekinetic feet, and you can push them miles away.
This is true.
Not
not
miles.
literally, like 30 feet, but a while.
Yeah, it's a lot of shoving.
Sure. It also helps, right? Like, we just prefaced this, Druids like making area of effect damage. Thunderwave does give you an area of effect shove. If you are want a really easy clean combo for a relatively new Druid, Spike Growth plus Thunderwave, you go, okay, put a Spike Growth down, things move through it, you shove them back in with Thunderwave. That's a nice, easy 1-2 punch.
All right. Well, we have deviated paths. Let's
That's
see
true.
if we continue to do so. What's next on your list?
I imagine we are going to continue to do the path just because this would be Thunderwave if it didn't exist. It's Ice Knife for me.
I thought about Ice Knife. I thought, could use a good damaging option, but then there's just so many spells that I wanted to put on this list, and I did not.
That's fair. I like Ice Knife a lot, specifically on Druids, because again, now this is like usurped Thunderwave as the best first level damage spell Druids get. And the reason I really like it is I like it in the early tier. I like it levels 1 through 3. I like that it has a 60-foot range. I like that it always does the 2d6 area damage, but it also lets you like selectively pick whatever you want to potentially take the 1d10 bonus damage. So you're in the situation where you have a little bit more flexible of an area of effect damage thing, where things that have lower HP you can deal less damage to, and you can give a little bit more damage than that has more HP. Like conceivably, if you can hit it right. There are a bunch of little nuisances with this spell. It being an attack roll and a damage save makes it so sometimes you're only doing the d10 damage and half 2d6 to other things. Sometimes you're only doing the 2d6 damage and you're missing the d10. But you always getting the explosion. You're being able to do a d10 plus 2d6 is genuinely a decent chunk of like that compares well to Guiding Bolt. And then it has 2d6 area effect damage stapled right to it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, this almost made my list, but and
do you need this and Thunderwave? Certainly not. So if you like Thunderwave a lot, I would probably not also put this on my sheet for what that's worth.
I don't know what I tell you about next one. Maybe I should have chosen Ice Knife.
You're really bringing a lot of confidence to this.
I started out confident, but now I'm gonna say, speak with animals.
That did not make my top 5. Listen. I love Speak with Animals dearly. I put it on almost all my Druids, almost all the time. It doesn't deserve top 5 spot. Come on.
I know, but I thought, I've got a Druid list, and I've got Entangle's Druidy, okay, but speak with animals. You're a Druid.
I
You gotta
agree.
speak with animals.
I really think they should just get it. Like, I think they're like how Rangers got an expanded thing in Tosh Called and everything that's like you always have these spells. This kind of deserves to be on like a Druids always get this. This feels more like it could be a cantrip for Druids, and I'd be like, yeah, I entirely get that. That's super fine. Even just like Druidic should just work with speaking with animals. If you know Druidic, you can use that to speak with animals. That seems like a really easy way to set up Druids as the animal speakers, the Beast Whisperers and stuff.
Yeah.
I find it to be very fun. I've always loved playing with it. It definitely isn't something you're casting every encounter, every session. It's definitely not something that you're going to be able to find a lot of value out of in every session. There will be some that's super useful. Some, animals are the scouts that are everywhere, but it's not consistent.
Yeah. Anyway, no, I don't feel bad about this.
That's fair. You don't have to. It's a ritual spell. That's a big perk to it, right? This is a spell that doesn't cost you spell slots once you prepare it. So if you've got like 4 other spells locked in, you go, I know what I'm using my actions. I know what I'm using my slots on. I'm sorry. This is a really easy one just to go, okay, well, if I'm taking a ritual spell or two, why not speak with animals? My next reason is the reason why to not pick speak with animals, because it's also a ritual spell. It's Detect Magic. Detect Magic is a baller spell that I think is way more applicable than speak with animals in most tables and most environments, and gives you great information. It's helpful with trap finding. It does a lot of world building alongside high utility in dungeons. That's why I think it pretty much readily deserves a spot to prepare. And again, it's a ritual spell, so if you've already know what you're doing with your spell slots, that's a really easy way to passively empower your character. If you prefer Speak with Animals to Detect Magic as far as Exploration goes, I think it's entirely reasonable to be that slot, though.
I did not pick Detect Magic. It should have made the list. It's easily a top 5. However, we've talked about it. It's on like every list.
And it's going to
We've
keep
talked
being on
about it
mine
so many
because it keeps
times.
emptying the slot.
Yes, and that's fair. That's fair. Another reason I knew you were going to take it.
That's a good reason.
So,
We need to talk about more
yeah.
spells this way.
Yeah. But also, there's Goodberry.
Goodberry is my number 5.
Here's your number 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Druids also get Healing Word. Hard to say which is definitively better, but I think if you've got somebody else with Healing Word, then you've got Goodberry. There's 2 different ways. And if you got somebody with a familiar that can deliver the good berries, even better.
I'll do you one better. So in Toxic Cauldron and everything, they added a feature called Wild Companion. So in D&D of old, like 3.5 and stuff, Druids had an animal companion. Now, they've reworked that as Wild Companion, which lets you use your wild shapes to cast Find Familiar with a duration. So you get hours equal to half your Druid level. So a 2nd level Druid can have a familiar for an hour, which makes Goodberry automatically so much better. Because now where Healing Word takes you actions, this, or takes you bonus actions to use in combat. I'm sorry, it takes off your ability to cast high level spells and stuff like that. With this, you can use a find familiar for an hour, give it your good berries that you use out of combat, and now you've got 10 healing words that don't take your action that can get people off of 0, which is it's so yucky good. There are some caveats there. If you need to be using your wild shapes for other things, namely wildfire druids or circle of spores or moon druids, it is a lot worse because you want to be using those for more powerful things to find familiar sometimes. In the instance that you're playing like a shepherd or you're playing a the circle of stars, I think that's the one that gets like the guiding bolt and stuff. If you're either of those archetypes and aren't using wild shape for other things beyond like exploration and whatnot, getting a familiar for an hour that can deliver good berries will take your utility up to 11. It'll make it so like you are playing 2 characters, one of which is just 10 healing potions, in addition to the help action, in addition to all the things that familiars are really good at. So I think Good Berry absolutely deserves a spot, especially because Wild Companion exists.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can even distribute your good berries to the whole party.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, it's not ideal if somebody else has to use an action to give another guy a good berry, but it's nice to have that option available.
It really is. If you go down and you're the one that's supposed to keep people alive, having other people with your good berries means you come back up. If you go down and you only have healing word, that's no longer enough. There's nothing you can do. I think Good Berry is an underrated little spell that is basically how I would only want my druid to be healing for the first entire tier of the game. For levels 1 to 5, I'm really only going to be leaning on Good Berries to keep people up and using my spells for their stuff.
Yeah, and if you've got a stickler of a DM that's worried about your food and stuff, these provide nourishment for a day.
This is true. I do have a rules question. I think this constitutes using an object. It might be use magic device though, and depending on which that is, Thief Rogue either is really good with these or is just like okay, not that great. But if it's used magic device, it's worse. If it's used an object, this is really good because Thief Rogues can do this bonus action with their fast hands. So that's cute.
I think it's going to be used magic device.
I would assume that as well.
Yeah.
Or like activate a magic item or whatever. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, so healing potions are magic items. I think you can do.
Potions are magic devices. I read this recently.
Okay. That means you fast hands shouldn't work with them, but it does work with alchemist fire and acid and non-magic items.
Those are not magic, yeah.
God, Thief is a weird
ironic
option.
It seems like a lot more complicated to use alchemist fire than it does to shove a berry into somebody's mouth.
I entirely agree. And you also, you should talk with your DM if you do a Thief Rogue in the party. Be like, hey, can they distribute good berries as a bonus action? I guarantee like 80% plus of DMs will say yes. So.
Are you? That was your number 5. Are you done with your list?
I am. Let's right through it.
Wait a second. Let me check and make sure I got all mine. I sure do. Wow, we blitzed through those.
Like you said, we have talked about Detect Magic quite a bit. So
yeah. What do you got?
My worst? My list.
No, no list.
All right. 1 is Entangle. 2 is Absorb Elements. 3 is Ice Knife. 4 is Detect Magic. 5 is Good Berry.
Yeah, these lists are a lot closer than I thought.
Yeah, what are yours?
Entangle, Absorb Elements, Thunder Wave, Speak with Animals, and Good Berry.
I do think like our damage spells and our ritual spells are kind of interchangeable. I'm not saying like Speak with Animals is uncastable. It's pretty fine if that's how you want to explore the world. And I think damage option wise, Thunder Wave is not. It's a reasonable damage option. It's just not as good as its competition, I don't think. If you enjoy that thematic though, I get it.
What's your worst?
Can you go first? Because I have 2.
Of course you do. All right, I'm pretty sure one of them is going to be the one I chose. I've got Detect Poison and Disease.
I think we're going to have the exact same conversation that we had recently on Cleric. Yeah, Detect Poison and Disease is definitely one of my runner-ups. The other one, I guess I have 3 then. We'll talk about what I haven't talked about before, but talk about why Detect Poison and Disease isn't great.
Well, the main reason is, well, I mean, I don't know if main reason is kind of bold, but let's see, because Purify Food and Drink exists on the very same list.
And neither are spells you should ever prepare.
No, but if poison is a thing, then rather than detect it, just purify whatever you're given.
And I'm of the mindset, if poison's a thing, detect it and don't eat it, right? Yeah. Like, you don't need to cure it if you know it's there.
My way is better. I'm hungry.
Yeah, sure. That's fair. And in any case, both these are the kind of spells that are in, like, you prepare these for the King's Feast that you suspect a poisoner is going to be there. And that's the only time you ever prepare these. And in those instances, it's kind of like, aha, we figured out the puzzle ahead of time and this confirms our suspicions. And that's like the only use case these things have. Because the rest of it's like, no, I'm good.
Would the other thing is, when do you need to detect a disease? I mean, like,
in a more compelling game,
if somebody is diseased and they don't know it, then they probably don't have any symptoms, and who cares?
So
if they do know it, like if they got like leprosy or something, like, need a spell to see that.
Okay, let's put ourselves in the Walking Dead situation, right? Let's say we're in a zombie apocalypse where zombieism is a disease. I think because Lesser Restoration exists, this spell gets to be worse. Because in a situation where there are diseases that can be mind-altering, there are diseases that can incubate and have devastating effects long-term, not knowing about them and not having to have tools that can... not knowing about them could be an interesting tension that could give detect poison to disease some comfort, right? You can say, okay, I prepared this, we're going to detect poison disease, who's got the problems, we'll figure out how to deal with those problems, we know who's got the problems, right? You use this to sort of go into new organizations and be like, maybe they're diseased by like an aboleth that's doing, some kind of mind control disease, and we want to make sure they aren't aboleth servants or whatever. That could be a cool use case for it. Unfortunately, Lesser Restoration says there can be no cool diseases. So, like, that's a bummer. But I think there could be potential for detect poison and disease to maybe have applications in a different game. That's not the game we're playing, though, and that makes it pretty abysmal.
Maybe you could find out who is an alcoholic.
Sure. Alcoholism is a disease, as we all know.
I was thinking, it's one of those things that is like garbage in this game, but in real life, instant diagnosis.
Yeah, very useful. In a game with a more engaging disease system, could be really cool. If you could make it better, disease system for the edition, I'd be all about detect poison to disease then. You could even make it have a little bit more text and more effect to deal with that. I do want to really touch on Snare. Snare is also abysmal. Snare is definitely doable with a mundane mean.
I thought about it.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to talk about at least. It's like, if you told me these are the mundane rules for building a snare, I'd be like, yeah, sure, why not? That makes enough sense to me. This costs you a spell slot, has a minute creation time, and isn't that effective at doing anything. Like, you could just cast Entangle and have a big restraining difficult terrain thing. It's a split action. This takes you a minute to set up, and things have to walk onto it. No, this is never happening in a proactive way.
That's not even the worst part.
What's the worst part?
You lose your rope.
That's true, the rope goes away, which is so stupid.
If you set up a regular snare, you get to keep the rope when you're done.
Yeah. Snare is a mistake. I can't believe they printed it, but here we are.
I'm glad you said that, because, even if it meant cheating, because I really wanted to pick snare, but I thought, no, detect poison and disease is still worse.
Yeah, listen, this is the similar reason why you didn't put Detect Magic on your top 5. I'm like, we talked about these two already. I'll include some other hot trash.
So okay, what were your 3? Did you cover all 3 worst?
I mean, honorarily, I covered Purify Food and Drink.
Oh, all right. Was that one on there?
Yeah, detect poison, disease, and Purify Food and Drink are kind of lumped together, and then Snare is my other. Like, yeah, this spell's awful.
But yeah, fun to talk about though.
Agreed. Druids. They're pretty good. They didn't used to be this good, and then they got a lot of support from the subsequent books. Like Absorb Elements, Ice Knife, both those made my top 5. The Wild Companion makes Goodberry a lot better. A lot of the utility of Druids, their action economy got a lot better because they got some extra flexibility stuff. They can use their wild shapes better in combat. They've got a better selection of subclasses that like round out new things they get to do. The classes got a lot better over time. So if you played Druid before, were a little bit jaded with maybe like Circle of the Land or Moon and didn't have a good time, I would recommend trying out with some of the new subclasses. I'd recommend starting out some of these new spells. I think you're having a great time.
All right, that was level 1 Druid Spells. Go back and watch our Druid cantrips and stay tuned for level 2.
It's gonna get spicy. Can't wait to talk about Summon Beast a whole lot.
And go watch Cleric and Wizard spells. And we did we do any?
We did Bard.
No, that's all. We did.
Yeah, we just
watch
finished
that
Bard.
too. Yeah, that's right. Too fresh in my mind. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Sam, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.